I went through a really nasty divorce, and I felt that a lot of it actually had to do with a lot of progressive politics, and me feeling that men are just not part of the future. I'm feeling like we're doing this pass the baton to these other people, and men are getting left behind, and it's all their fault, and we need to continue to shit all over men. Hi, my friends. I want to do a quick video. I noticed in a lot of the comments from my videos that a lot of men have been talking about kind of going their own way. And a lot of men have been talking about that they're happily single and they don't want to invite drama into their lives by being with a woman. And there's kind of this notion of marriage is outdated and you'd have to be a total idiot. Marriage is a scam. You'd have to be a total idiot in order to want to get married. And this is really fascinating to me because been giving a lot of advice about how to treat your wife better in order to get, have a better relationship and ultimately get what you want out of life and out of a marriage. And people are like, well, what marriage, dude? If you get married, somebody told me I was living in the 70s, still believing that marriage was like a positive thing for men. So this has been really shocking for me, but at the end of the day, it's also not super shocking to me. I think a lot of men have walked away, and I want to kind of talk about that topic, and I think it'd be great to kind of go into on this channel. And I really want to solicit feedback. For me, a lot of guys have said, hey, I'm in my 40s and I'm just single. I'm just out of it, dude. I'm not playing that game anymore. And my initial question is much. It's like, are you happy in that? And for me, I've always been a relationship guy. I've always believed in marriage. I grew up in the Lutheran church, and I was just believed in a man growing up and getting a career and getting married and having children, and that was kind of the blueprint that always made sense to me. But so when I'm hearing guys say like, yeah, I've got my apartment, my car, my whatever, I don't have somebody screaming at me or cheating on me or telling me I'm bad. Yeah, I'm happy and I'm at peace. It's really interesting to me. So if somebody out there is listening to this and they're like, yeah, I walked away and it's not worth it, I would love to hear your what do you have to say in the comments? Are you happy, or do you also maybe feel that this is like, well, this is just a state of what it is, and if the world changes, maybe I'll get back into the game, but as it stands now, I'm just walking away. And so I'm really interested to know where kind of how people arrive there, and I want to kind of talk about that on this channel, because I came from like a male support group space, so a lot of times when men would come into that space, they would be struggling with their marriages, and I got a lot of self-fulfillment and I got a lot from holding space for other men and listening to them and feeling like and giving them the sense that, hey, I've gone through something similar, or I know I've heard, counseling men has been a big part of my life for the last couple of years, because I went through a really nasty divorce, and I felt that a lot of it actually had to do with a lot of progressive politics, and me feeling that men are just not part of the future. I'm feeling like we're doing this pass the baton to these other people, and men are getting left behind, and it's all their fault, and we need to continue to shit all over men. So that's something that I'm very passionate about, and it's really it strikes a nerve with me, and I actually think it's quite interesting, because now I'm seeing that it's actually struck a nerve with a lot of men, and I live in a more progressive area, so I feel like when I'm talking about men's issues, I'm doing the thing where I'm like looking over my shoulder to see who's listening, because it's just one of those things where it's been such in our such a mainstay in our culture to be, if you don't agree with these progressive ideas, then you're part of the problem, and we're coming after you. You're one of the bad apples. And I think so many men have now felt disaffected. It's like there's now all of a sudden going to be like a reckoning for men saying like, yeah, we're out. And it's quite interesting, because I feel that played a massive role in the last election, and there's so many articles that come out that are so overtly negative about why are men going towards the far right or whatever, and the mood and the tone of those articles are just so vindictive in terms of like, well, obviously this is evil, obviously we're losing these men, and they're all the chuds, or they're all the incels. And I was watching a stand-up comedian the other day, and it was talking about this woman was playing to a largely progressive crowd, and she just said, so apparently there's a male loneliness epidemic, and then the crowd just erupts laughing.
You guys know that there's like a male loneliness epidemic? You guys...
That wasn't even the punchline. She hadn't even told a joke yet, but that's the thing. Men are the joke. Men are the joke to the progressive movement, and I guess in a way it's like refreshing that this is becoming a problem that we can actually talk about, because again, this is a main reason why that pushed me towards divorce. I felt that I had married a feminist, and I felt that I had no value. I felt that a lot of the movement is all about uplifting and placing value on other people and other minority groups. And if you're not advocating for them, effectively your usefulness and your worth is tied to how much of an ally you are to these other groups. And for me, that just really reeked of, as the United States of America is meant to be a free country. I think it's good for the big guy to stand up for the little guy, but at the end of the day, also, like, individuals have to be able to feel like they have value themselves, and we're not asked as we're not part of a communist regime where we always have to be looking out for our comrades at the expense of ourselves. It's also like, if our country is spending a lot on foreign aid, but we have a lot of problems at home, what are we spending the money on the foreign aid for? And so, I'll take that back to when I was married. I was in a house with my ex-wife was very feminist, and it was like, the feminist, the progressive agenda is all focused on massive societal level problems. So meanwhile, my marriage, I had children with this woman. My marriage is falling apart, and her entire focus is on everything that's external to the house. And what's going on inside the house is that the marriage is not, the marriage is dying. I'll say that. I always talk about this. I've always been a marriage guy, and marriage takes a lot of work. Every single day, you have to wake up and you have to decide, I'm going to marry. I am going to love my partner, and I'm going to treat it as my job to care for my partner. And if you're derelict of your duties in your job, then your marriage goes down. It's marriage is not all sunshine and rainbows, and it takes a supreme amount of consistency and dedicated effort, of which I think a lot of people these days just aren't able to summon within themselves. And I struggle, myself included. I'm somebody that wants to be a big advocate for marriage. But at the end of the day, I think you just have to look at it as, every single morning I got to wake up and I have to do this job. My job is to care and love my partner. And with going with that, when you have a marriage that is a significant endeavor on its own, and you have children, which once kids arrive on the scene, it drastically complicates a marriage. But then you have one person that's massively obsessed with everything that's going on external, and we got to advocate for women, we got to advocate for LGBTQ, we got to advocate for Black Lives Matter. And I'm not trying to demonize or say that those efforts are not worth it. But for me, what I was running into was my marriage was breaking down. Like, you married me, you married a man, and I felt that my entire sense of self-worth as a man in that space, in that ecosystem, was entirely tied to how much allyship that I was willing to give. And I don't want myself to be defined as how much of an ally I can be for other people. I want to live in a world where I can have value myself. I can be striving and thriving and being boosting myself up, and me having inherent self-worth. So that's why systems where we always are constantly being pushed to have lionize other groups and just basically live for other groups, it's not gonna ring true. It will always fail, because you're being asked to care. You're asked to put yourself aside and care about these other groups and make sure that they're pushed ahead.